and welcome back to Darvanalee Designs Studio. My name's Nicole Reed and today we're already at block 3, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit more intricate than the last two blocks. So we're going to dive into the fan one here, and it's got a few blades on it, and it's called Cool Fan, and it's broken up into 4 components. So let's get started. Okay, so here we are at block 3. It is called Cool Fan, and as you can see, this one is a little bit more intricate. Again, it's broken up into 4 components, so it's not too hard, but we're going to do a couple of things a little bit different this time. Okay, so you're going to need the same tools that you needed for block 1 and 2. So you'll need some pins, you'll need a glue pen, some paper scissors, a hand presser or a mini iron. You will need some thread snips, you'll need a rotary cutter, some template plastic or cardboard, and a couple of quilting rulers. And let's hope we don't need a quick unpick as well. Have it handy just in case. Okay, so in the last block we actually joined some of our templates together. We don't need to do that in this block, but we are actually going to do something a little bit more intricate than the last 2 blocks that we've done. So now you understand that when you are doing your first one, your fabric must be facing up with the wrong side of the fabric facing down to the template, and the right side of the fabric facing up, and your the next piece that goes on, which is number 2 in the sequence, it will then be right sides together. So if you're not too sure how to go with that, I do have those videos that you can go into and you can watch them, and that will give you a much better idea. So I will also put up down along the bottom just about now where I will say right sides together or the right side facing up. Alrighty, so let's get started. You need your 3 fabrics. So we need a background fabric, which is the white fabric that I'm using, and then I've got my 2 contrasting fabrics. Now go ahead and head over to our blog and download your template pieces. You'll have a colouring in page there, you'll have a layout of what the block looks like, and you will also have some template pieces. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've cut all my template pieces out. So you will notice on your templates that there are some shaded greys and there are some white. Now wherever it is white on your template, that is your background fabric. So whatever background fabric that you have chosen to use, that is where your background will go. So what we're going to do on these templates, because there are so many blades to it, I'm actually going to make some markings. So what I do is wherever it says, wherever I know my background fabric's going to go, I either put the color white or the letters background, BG for background, or I write background. So either way, you can write whatever you want on there just as a reminder. For today, I'm just going to use BG. So I've marked all those, so I know all those little numbers there are going to be a white fabric. Now we've got some shaded fabrics here, so again I've made it so you've got a contrast. So the darker one is your dark fabric, the lighter grey is your lighter fabric. So for me, my dark fabric is black, and I will write that on there. And then my lighter fabric, the lighter grey area, is my red, so I will write red on that one and on that one. And as you go along, you'll actually get a little bit better at doing this. You'll just write whatever color that you're using. If you're using all your scraps out of your scrap bin and you're making this extremely scrappy, that's great. You can just go for it. You don't need to necessarily do this step. But for those that are just using the 3 colors, I would really like you to do that on this step, and you do that to all of your templates. Okay, you can see that I've done all that, and I can set those aside now, and we're going to start with our first block. So basically we need to find where A1 is, and it is here, and for me that is a red piece of fabric. Okay, so I've got a piece of red fabric here that I'm able to use out of my scrap bin. So basically what I'm going to do is, like I've done in the other blocks, I'm going to flip it over, and A1 is just there. I'm going to put a little bit of glue on there, and then I'm just going to lay my piece on to the template, and I can see that that's covering everything there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to find where A2 is, and that is a white piece of fabric. So basically what I can do, and you can see it's a small one, so I can use some of my scraps from my first 2 blocks. So I grab my template plastic like we have done with all our other blocks, and we're going to align it on that black line there that joins A1 to A2. We're actually going to move our paper out of the way, then we're going to grab our little ruler and we're going to align our 1/4 inch line on the edge of that fabric. Then we'll grab our rotary cutter and we'll just trim that excess away, and then we've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now what we can do is now flip that over and we can get our white scrap piece and we can align that on there. Now we are working with angles, so you do want to actually check that this is going to cover, including the seam allowance over there. And how I do that is I just get a pin and I just put it in at the 1/4 inch mark. Okay, because that's where we're going to sew, and then I'll flip that over and make sure that that's going to cover everything, and you can see there that it is. So I'm pretty safe now to go over to the sewing machine and sew that into place. So what I'm going to do is actually remove the pin and turn it back a little bit, move it back a little bit further so I don't run over it with my presser foot or my sewing machine needle. Pop that into place, flip that over, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch on that line there. Now you can see here that we've got a corresponding line here. That is fine. If you stitch 1 or 2 stitches into that, that's okay. Go right ahead and do that because it'll be caught up in the seam allowance and it won't make any difference. So just start with a back stitch and end with a back stitch, and we'll get that second piece of fabric sewn on. Okay, so we've sewn that piece into place. We can flip that over, we can grab our little hand press and we can just press that down into place, and we know that we've now sewn that piece on and it's covering all the sections that we need to. To get rid of that excess fabric, I'm just going to trim that off and put it into our scrap bin. So now we're up to A3. So again, we need to create a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You're going to get your template or cardboard, whatever you might be using. You're going to place it onto that line and you're going to move the paper out of the way. You're going to grab your ruler and put your 1/4 inch mark onto the edge of the paper, and then you are going to trim off that excess fabric. Flip the paper back over, remove your template plastic, and now the next piece that we've got to sew on is a black piece. So again, we flip that over, we grab a piece of black fabric, and you can see here I've got quite a large piece. That's okay. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue there to stop that from moving on me. Okay, just a little dot, and then that's going to hold in place for me. Okay, so I've got a long piece of black fabric here. That's okay. All I'm going to do is I'm going to align my straight edges together, straight raw edges together. I'm going to pop a pin in that. Not even going to worry that it's longer, and I will now head over to the sewing machine. So they're right sides together. Head over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew on this line here. So you can see here that I do have excess fabric, but I'm not going to worry about cutting it off. I'll just trim that up in a moment when we get ready to do the next piece. So we've sewn that. We need to flip this over. Then we're going to push our fabric so it's right sides facing up. Grab our little hand presser. Give that a press, flip it back over, and now we're going to get rid of our excess fabric. So we grab our template plastic or cardboard, whatever you're using, and we're going to place it where you can see A4 is here and A3 is here, and we're going to put it on that mark just there. So that line, place the straight edge of your template plastic on that. Pull back your paper out of the way, grab your rotary cutter and your ruler, place the quarter inch mark of your ruler on the edge of the paper and trim off that excess. The next color we need is a piece of white. So you can see here these angles are starting to come together now. So we need a piece of white, and I'm just going through my scrap again, and I'm going to align up my straight edges, and I don't need to go all the way off here because the piece that I need to cover is just here. So I'm going to make sure that it's a quarter inch past the line, and you probably can't see that, but I'll draw it so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is the piece that I've got to cover, this little white bit here. So you can see here my point of this triangle, which was in my scrap bin, is actually going a quarter inch past this line. So I can leave that there, and that gives me ample fabric to use in another section because we've got lots of little triangles in this, so I can use this again. So I'm just going to place a pin into that and hold it into place. I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to stitch along this line here, making sure that I back stitch at either end, and then we are on to the next piece. So we've stitched that into place, and now what we're going to do, like we've done all the other times, is we're going to flip that fabric back so it's right sides facing up, and then we give that a press, flip that back over, and now we're going to sew A5, and that is a red piece. So again, we grab our template plastic, and I just pop that into the center like so. I push the paper out of the way. I grab my ruler, aligning my quarter inch mark up with the edge of the paper, and then I just grab my rotary cutter and I trim away that excess fabric. Now remember not to throw your fabric away, just pop it into your scrap bin, that way you can use it throughout the quilt. Now I can flick that back, and the next color I need is red. So you can see here we're starting to get some really nice angles. So I've got my fabric, and I'm just going to align that up, grab a couple of pins and pin that into place. And then I'm going to head over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew that line just there, making sure that I reverse at the beginning at the end. So we've sewn that into place. I'm just going to flip that over and grab my little hand press, give that a really good press, and then I'm going to get rid of this excess fabric. So the next piece that we're going to be sewing on is this line here, and that's connecting A5 to A6. So grab your little piece of template plastic or whatever that you're using, put your paper out of the way, grab your rotary cutter, and just get rid of some of this excess fabric. Okay, you're going to place your ruler with the quarter inch marker against the edge of the paper, and then you're going to trim away that excess. So move your fabric out of the way, get rid of all your little bits and pieces, and then the next piece that we're going to put on is a background piece. So again, I grab my white fabric, and if your bigger pieces are giving you a little bit of grief, just in with the bit that you've got to cover, just put a little bit of glue, and that will just remain in place for you. So you can see here that we're starting to get some decent points. So I'm just going to grab some more white fabric because it's just a small piece that I've got to cover, and I'm going to place that up at this end here, making sure that it is going to cover that section. And I'm just going to pop a pin in here so it just doesn't move on me, making sure I've got enough room for my presser foot to pass by the pins because we're sewing on the line. Flipping that over, and then we're going to sew from here down, making sure that we do go into the seam allowance here so that way we get a nice sharp point. Okay, so we've sewn that. We're going to flip that over like we have in the past, and now we get our little presser or your little mini iron, and we put that out of the, give that a good press, and it's out of the way. We're going to flip our page over, and we're going to now get our template plastic, and we're going to place it on this here that's connecting A7 to the rest of the block, Again, we move our paper out of the way, we get our ruler, and if you've sewed into the seam allowance, just pull that fabric down. That's okay. It's perfectly okay. It just is added strength for when we go to remove the paper. Grab our rotary cutter, and then we just get rid of that excess fabric. Remove our template plastic. And flip it back over. So you can see here we're starting to get what looks like a fan. Now we are sewing on A7, which is actually a background fabric. So I'm going to grab a strip of white fabric, and I'm just going to make sure that that is actually going to cover it, and I can see that it is. So again, I just line everything up. My edges are meeting, and I'm putting them right sides together. I grab a couple of pins, pop that in there like so, and up this end as well, making sure I'm leaving enough room for my presser foot to go past the pin so I don't have to remove them. I'm going to flip that over, and then starting up here in the seam allowance, 1 or 2 stitches, I'm going to stitch all the way down, making sure that you reverse at the beginning and at the end. Okay, so we've removed our pins, and we'll just clip off our threads, and we can roll that fabric back now, and then we can get our little presser and we can give that a light pressing. We're going to flip that over, and we've got one more piece to put on, which is a white piece, and we get our template plastic and put our straight edge against that line. We pop that out of the way, grab our ruler, put the 1/4 inch mark on the edge of the paper, then grab our rotary cutter and trim off that excess fabric. Okay, we are almost finished this quarter. Next, you're going to grab your piece of white fabric, you're going to flip it over again, and then we're going to align our straight edges here, making sure that when we flip it over it is going to cover it. Grab a pin, place it in, flip it over, and stitch this last line. Okay, get rid of your threads, take your pin out, roll your fabric over, give it a little press with your presser, and then we can flip this over, and now we are ready to trim up our block. So we just grab our quilting ruler, we align our 1/4 inch mark of our ruler on that inside dark line, and then we just trim away on that lighter outside line. So you can see there I've still got 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that's our first quarter done, and now we're going to do that exact same method to the rest of our templates until we've got 4 quarters, and then we'll be ready for block assembly. Alrighty, so we're finished doing our 4 units for our block, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take unit A and unit B, and we're going to place them right sides together, and then we're going to pin them into place, making sure that everything is aligning properly. And we're going to pop a pin in at the points, and we're also going to pop a pin in up the top here. As I said, making sure that everything is aligning and we're ready to sew. So you're going to start here at the edge, and when you're going to sew on that line all the way down to the bottom, and you're going to sew off the edge and do a reverse at the beginning and at the end. Okay, so there is template A and B put together, and now we'll do the same with D and C. Again, right sides together, aligning everything that needs to be aligned, popping a pin in, and then one up at this end. Okay, so we've got our pins in. We're going to start here, reverse, and then go down to here and reverse and stitch along that line. Okay, so that is unit C and D put together, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take the top row and the bottom row and line them up, making sure that we nest our center seams, just like you would do for any other patchwork. Now you may find that this is just a little bit bulky in here, but that's okay. Just take it slow when you're sewing it through, and if you need to, just put a wonder clip into that point there. Line up all your other sides, putting a pin in, and the same at this end. And so we're going to, again, starting off at the edge, back stitching, and then going all the way along this line to the other end and back stitching at the end. Okay, so that's all sewn together. Now we can open that up. You can give that a really good press and set that aside. If you're finding that there's a lot of bulk there because there are some seams coming into one another, you can just try and flatten that out with your iron. That'll be fine. So there we go. That is our third block for the block of the month. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I really do hope that you enjoyed our little tutorial on the Cool Fan block. If you like this video today, give us a thumbs up down below. Hit that subscribe button if you're new here and ring the little bell icon beside it, and that way you won't miss out on any future posts. As always, we love to hear from you, so leave us a comment down below. And for those that don't know, my name's Nicole Reed from Darvanalee Designs Studio, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye for now.